Good afternoon, everyone. This particular video is going to focus on phase one of what we're calling our return to on-site operations plan. It's a multi-phase plan that's made up of 3 different phases. And I've got a friend joining me today. Everyone say hi to Bev. Bev is our Vice President of, is it Student Affairs? Is that correct?
Correct.
And one reason I wanted Bev to be here, she's not only Vice President of Student Affairs, but she is the Lincoln Campus Director. So what we're doing in phase one is we're bringing a few more folks. We have some that are already have been working, very few, that their sort of jobs require that they be on campus. But in phase one, we're going to start bringing back a few others. And one of the main reasons for phase one, it starts in June 1, is to give ourselves an opportunity to implement new safety and control protocols and see how they work and see what adjustments we need to make before we bring too many people back. And then July 1 is where we would be focusing on phase 2, and then August 10 is our kind of official date, knowing that those dates might move around a little bit. So Bev, what I'd like for you to do is give us a little bit of detail about some of these things like social distancing, face coverings, self-monitoring, personal hygiene. What does that look like on, and when you speak to this, be mindful of the fact that, I want this to be generalized to what's happening in Milford and in Beatrice. And I think that's the way we're designing the protocols that we did send out to all employees today. And you've been doing a lot of campus coffee. So what questions are you getting, and what is this going to look like? And I do want to remind everyone that we're excited about, returning back to operations. We're excited about offering the highest quality learning experience, but we are absolutely committed to doing that in a way that is giving safety the highest priority. So I'll let you talk a little bit.
So our next steps through all of this is really kind of finding the right balance for each of the departments and because what fits in one area doesn't necessarily work in another area. So, whether we need plexiglass barriers or whether we need to talk about the wearing of the face coverings, it's just going to depend. So we work together with each of the supervisors and the teams for each of the departments and come up with a safety plan that works for them. And that way then everybody feels like they're a part of that conversation, and then they own that action, that safety plan, and they can move it forward.
I know we've already received a couple of questions today when we sent out the safety and protocols. And for example, one question that was asked was, well, what about if I have health issues as it relates to wearing a mask? And we're not asking everyone to be wearing masks everywhere they go. We put in the document that if you're in certain high traffic spaces, we are encouraging, recommending people wear a mask. But obviously, we're going to work with folks. We're really focused, and I think we've done a good job. And I think it's important that we be flexible and sensitive to different needs of others. So I know on the Lincoln campus, as an example, you have a lot of large corridors. What kinds of things are we going to be doing to make sure, it's safe to move in and around those corridors?
We've talked, each space is analyzed. Safety and security have already gone through it and created kind of a list of what they recommend for each of the areas. Very wide corridors are different than the shorter corridors. So each one kind of gets looked at. There might be tape on the floor. Again, it kind of depends on each of the spaces. We might go into the commons area, remove some of the chairs and tables. So that way then we can kind of limit the intensity and density of people in that space. And then again, certain areas we might expect the face coverings. Other areas we wouldn't necessarily ask that people do it. There might be placards on the floor that suggest, okay, if you're going to wait in line, let's just wait 6 feet apart. A good example is the Course Coffee Shop. We identify that we'll have 2 patrons in there at a time. There'll be plexiglass, and describe all of the cleaning protocols that we'll do in between each of the patrons. So that way then people can feel comfortable going in there and still doing all the things they want to do.
Yeah, I think one of the things also it's important for everyone to remember is that we're not just making up these rules. These are coming from health officials. These are what we call directed health measures. And I think it's real important for everyone to kind of remember that we're operating off some basic assumptions that are coming from those measures. And one of them is right now, and these keep changing, but right now, I think it was the number of people in a group went from 10 to 25. But actually, the way the language reads, it's 25 or 25% of the capacity within a room, whichever is greater. So we're getting a lot of detailed questions about, well, what about happens in a classroom? Well, if you follow that basic information, then if you've got a capacity that will allow 25% to be greater than 25, then you can do that while staying 6 feet apart and so forth. And the face coverings are recommended when you might be within 6 foot. So if you're further than that, then if you're a professor, you wouldn't necessarily need to have a face mask on while teaching, of course. But the other thing, Bev, that we also want to let everyone know is that some of those questions about what's happening in the classroom, we're absolutely going to be very clear about what the guidance is and what's being recommended as we get closer. But we don't want to start making real precise directives before so far in advance that we really know that it's going to change and probably not be relevant. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to be very mindful of that while also trying to help people feel more comfortable by knowing some information. So that's why we sent out those safety and security protocols. And I know you and several others and myself have been involved in this multi-phase approach, but I think phase one, we are starting to get a few more people that have expressed an interest. And I think one of the things, is because it can be so isolating, coming back for some people now and helping us kind of test things out. We appreciate those individuals willing to do that. And of course, we're going to be very safe and appropriate in how we do that. What else would you like to add about phase one?
I do appreciate those individuals who are kind of helping us walk through and work through this, kind of testing some things and seeing if it works and how they feel about it, and giving that feedback. Because I think that's really a big part of this is we're doing this together as a team. And it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. And we want to be able to help everybody work through this as we evolve in the next few months, because things are going to change.
I got a comment. I did a webinar a couple of weeks ago, I think, and in that webinar, I talked about how important it is as supervisors, as leaders, that we absolutely need to be understanding of what our employees are going through, but also trust them and know that we have hardworking employees that are going to do the right thing. And so this idea of worrying about, well, we can't see them, it's not about that. It's we absolutely trust them. But I also would say that it's real important now more than ever for our employees to trust us as leaders, to trust us as supervisors, that we absolutely have their intentions in mind as we move forward in this process. But trusting your leader is just as important as your leaders trusting your employees. And as you pointed out, it's not an individual effort here, it's a team effort. And speaking of which, is it true, Bev, that when I called or had you zoom in just a few minutes ago, that you were hesitant wanting to do this video, but look how awesome this video has turned out.
Always, yes.
And I do think that's another point to make, is that if you're a person that is not a big fan of spontaneity, and you like to have things planned out, this is a difficult time to be able to do that. So you might want to, maybe be a little bit more flexible in your desire to have everything planned out. We're doing our best to do that, but we also know we have to be fluid and we have to be able to pivot quickly.
Is that a message directly to me? Are you kind of telling me chill out a little bit?
I am.
I thought so.
I am doing it in a public way. No, I think you're doing wonderful. All of our campus directors have been given a whole new challenge. And I know it's been overwhelming, but I think we're starting to really get a nice sense of how we're going to do this. And I think we're going to do some really special things. I talked to a reporter, and he had asked about, well, some colleges are looking at the idea of, or they are going to close at Thanksgiving, and they're going to start early. And we know some of that's happening. We've been discussing that as part of our plan. But the approach we're taking is to move forward with our 2020 schedule as it has been put together, but with the notion that what we want to be able to do is to quickly change as necessary. So for example, if there is a need or a spike around Thanksgiving, we want to be able to finish out in an online way. We might be moving some of our current technical lab activities up a little earlier, possibly, so that we can be in a position to do that. So we want to be as flexible as we can. And what that does is it gives us more options, and it also reduces the workload on changing this. If you imagine if you went and changed the schedule and all of that coding, if we just had proof that we're able to pivot, and that was with no warning. So if we can do it under those conditions, we can do it now that everybody's been trained up on Zoom and Canvas and Kaltura and other technologies. So I think that's super important. That and we have different types of student populations. Most of our students are not residential. We have some residential, but those don't make up the majority of our students. What else would you like to add, Bev?
I know that this can be kind of stressful at this, it's not planned. We have to pivot easily and quickly. But I have a strong belief that we're in this together and everybody will be a part of it. And, there's no question in my mind that SCC and the people of SCC and how much they care for the students and one another, we're gonna lead through this and lead other institutions through it.
I think over the last few years, we've shown ourselves to be very resilient with all this transformation that we've been going through in the Goal 9. I think that's been really wonderful. But I don't know of another institution that has taken on this amount of transformation at this pace. I don't believe there's one out there. I don't feel like we had a choice. I think that we were in a position that we needed to modernize and we needed to do it quickly. And that's what we're doing. And it's been a wonderful process. Let me kind of wrap things up. Any very last minute things? You've had some really good comments. All right. Bev, thank you so much for taking a little time this afternoon. We appreciate that. And you have a great rest of your day and say bye to the college. We'll see everyone.
Bye, everybody. See you later.